Hi, my name is Dr. Kaisa Huhta, and I'm a senior researcher and an Academy of Finland postdoc fellow at the University of Eastern Finland and at our Center for Climate Change, Energy and Environmental Law, which currently hosts around 70 people focusing in and around these themes. Today, I'm going to talk to you energy enthusiasts about capacity mechanisms in EU free movement law. My insights on this theme are based on an upcoming second edition of Capacity Mechanisms in EU Energy Market, which covers a wide range of legal, policy and economic questions revolving around these state-driven safeguards to ensure resource adequacy. In the process of making this book, I've been sort of wearing two hats. I'm part of our amazing team of editors of the book, and together we've managed to put together what I think is a super timely collection of both substantive and country-specific perspectives on capacity remuneration. In addition to my editorial role, I've also co-authored a chapter in the book on free movement of goods with Peter Oliver. And today I thought I would share just a couple of snippets from our joint chapter. So in the energy sector, the internal market is the basis on which EU energy policy is built. So in other words, it's built on the assumption that pooling the resources of all member states by establishing this area without internal frontiers creates benefits which the member states cannot achieve independently. And an internal market like this, in which electricity is produced in the most cost-efficient location and then transmitted for consumption in the member state where the demand and the price is the highest, is expected to ensure resource adequacy is in the most economical way possible. Now, we all know that in the electricity sector, this is not how it always works out in practice. But it is nevertheless the approach on which the legal system is founded. This internal market approach also implies that member states are required to face security risks together and to assist each other when needed. This requirement is also highlighted by the principle of solidarity, which has recently been confirmed by the Court of Justice of the European Union as a legally binding principle of EU energy law. And these principles, the principle of solidarity and the internal market approach to energy markets, are included in Article 194 of the treaty, according to which the objectives of EU energy policy, including security of supply and resource adequacy as an element of this security of supply, should be pursued in the context of the establishment and functioning of the internal market, and in a spirit of solidarity between member states. So this line of internal market thinking finds legal expression in Articles 34 and 35 of the treaty, which prohibit quantitative and qualitative restrictions on imports and exports and all measures that have equivalent effect. And both of these free movement of goods provisions are highly relevant and applicable to capacity mechanisms. But research shows that capacity mechanisms tend to be really problematic from the point of view of these free movement rules. Since capacity mechanisms are intended to improve national resource adequacy, they have typically been designed with national rather than European or regional interests in mind, and without cross-border coordination. Sharing the benefits and the good sides of these pooled energy resources is typically really welcomed by member states, and why not? But sharing the risks and the insecurities of interdependence between member states is often politically very sensitive, and this is often also reflected in member states' capacity mechanism designs. And as a result of this, capacity mechanisms have tended either to ignore the contributions made by imports in their national resource adequacy assessments, or to prohibit the participation of foreign capacity providers altogether. So there's a really interesting conflict of thinking here. Sensitive national energy security interests are hard to reconcile with the free movement of goods and with the requirement to ensure security of supply in the spirit of solidarity. And this is one of the reasons why the Commission has wanted to, quote, to ensure that member states introduce capacity mechanisms only when needed and in such a way that the internal energy market is not carved up into national markets at the expense of consumers and potentially climate objectives, end quote. This Commission's promise is also reflected in the Clean Energy Package, which prohibits member states from adopting capacity mechanisms without cross-border participation and without due regard for these fundamental freedoms that underpin the entire EU legal system. So our chapter focuses on capacity mechanisms under the EU rules on free movement of goods. We start by explaining why electricity is considered goods in the context of EU free movement law, and by exploring the relationship between state aid, so the remuneration for capacity, and then the free movement of goods. We also explain the conditions under which the free movement of goods can be restricted exceptionally, and examine how these rules function then in the context of resource adequacy and capacity mechanisms as instruments of resource adequacy. And then finally, we demonstrate how the harmonization on capacity mechanisms in the Clean Energy for All Europeans package affects the application of these free movement of rules, and show how the principle of energy solidarity plays out in the internal market context. So if you'd like to hear more about these themes, I warmly invite you to read our chapter. Many thanks for listening.